Hello, everyone, and welcome. Today I have with me Kristi Clover. We're going to be talking about adding joy and organizing chaos. And she is, kind of the master of organizing all of the chaos, especially because she's an author of M.O.M, Master Organizer of Mayhem. And she has simple solutions to organize chaos and bring joy into your home. So, welcome, Kristi.
Hello. Thanks so much for having me on again. It's always fun to chat with you.
Absolutely. I am so grateful that you're here. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your family.
Absolutely. Well, my name is Kristi Clover, and we have been homeschooling for I think we're going on 12 years. I kind of lose count. Like it's over 10. I know that much. But we have been homeschooling for quite a while now. My husband and I have been married for 23 years. That number I know. We have 5 kids. Our oldest just graduated this year, which was just so amazing. And it just shows the flexibility of homeschooling because he actually started the year as a junior, and we just decided mid-year that let's do it. Let's finish you up. And so it's been really exciting just to see how homeschooling has benefited our family. So our oldest again is graduated. He is 18. So like that's why I'm like, do the math. He's 18. Then we have a 17-year-old who's a junior, and then we have a 12-year-old, a 9-year-old, and a 7-year-old who lost her teeth and wants nothing more than for Christmas to get her 2 front teeth. So
Oh, I love it.
listening to that over and over again. So it's been really fun.
Oh, I love that. I love that. So we're going to be talking a little bit about organization today. And I thought we'd start with a basic question of why is organization important for homeschoolers?
Okay, if you want to really do homeschool the hard way, just wing it. And actually, I do encourage people, like, don't feel like you have to have all your ducks in a row when you're first starting out. Just do wing it when you're starting out. But what you want to kind of do if you are one of those families just kind of getting going is that while you're winging it, you're kind of taking mental notes. What are your kids thriving in? What are you thriving in? What's working? What's not working? And then create a plan. So that is what I'm so passionate about, is really helping families to experience more joy in their homeschool, because it can be really overwhelming. I like to say that it takes a certain amount of crazy to homeschool. And I think it's pretty true. I mean, people will tell you that constantly when you share the fact that you homeschool. I guess right now, though, it doesn't happen as much because more than anything, I have neighbors coming up going, I had no idea all that you did. You're amazing. I'm like, thank you. So it's been kind of fun. But I will say that along with the book, M.O.M, Master Organizer of Mayhem, I did kind of start off sharing about how to organize through a course that I created called the Ultimate Homeschool Organization course. So that was kind of funny how that started off. I did a YouTube video kind of sharing, some things that were working in our home, some systems I had created, and people were just asking so many questions. They wanted all of the things I'd created. And so I was like, I can put this together. So I do have that available if people are curious.
Yeah, and you can find everything we're talking about today and more about Kristi at kristiclover.com. So take note of that web address, because that's where this all is located.
Right.
So let's talk a little bit about why it's important to bring joy into your life and your homeschool, and how organization really does help with that. You mentioned it a little bit.
Oh, yes. So I really didn't answer the question completely. But yeah, so it's important because I do think that you can get overwhelmed and bogged down. And so the best way to bring about peace is to really incorporate some organization. So once you have gotten started and you're kind of trying to, streamline things, I like to encourage people to plan out their whole year. It sounds really bizarre, but we plan our entire year in the summertime. So that way my kids literally just, they know exactly what they're doing each and every week. It does help to have a program like Sonlight that has things laid out for you. You have your checklist there. And there are some really more efficient ways to even be organized within Sonlight. So there's lots of things that you can do to really just, I guess, bring about joy is really a great way of saying it. But when you are incorporating fun and you have a game plan, you feel less stress, because homeschooling does bring a level of stress to it. You are responsible for your children's education. it's a little daunting. So when you feel like that, it's good to know that you have systems in place, you have curriculum set up, however, if you're just using the books and just kind of having fun with, you might not need like set curriculum, but you are homeschooling through just literature or however you're choosing to homeschool. It's amazing to see how when you have that game plan, you can rest in the fact that your kids aren't falling behind. They're getting a better education than they ever could have gotten because you're playing into their passions and their interests. And it's a lot more fun to read a book than to read a textbook. And your kids are going to remember it because there's so much character development that happens in stories. So it's such a fun way to incorporate that joy between books and getting organized. And so you can work the two together.
Absolutely. Sonlight is flexible enough that you can make changes, as you were suggesting, or maybe you weren't, I don't know. As you mentioned, you
I can
said,
share my Sonlight secrets with people.
right? But you can make it work for you. If something's not working for you, scratch it off. It's totally fine and move on to the next thing. 100%
Absolutely.
okay. So let's talk a little bit about organization specifically. You have an entire book based on this and a few courses as well. So let's talk about how you suggest prioritizing what to organize and then where people can start first.
Yeah, well, the most important thing is to kind of, like I'd mentioned, you want to plan out your whole year. And what that looks like is always tell people start with a course of study. It's kind of a little homeschoolese there. But you're going to list out what subjects you desire to teach and what the state requires you to teach. You got to know what your state laws are. So you write down all of those things and you put each kid's name underneath each subject. And that's where I take a look at, like, what are we using? What curriculum do we plan to use? And oftentimes there's overlap. So that's why I really encourage people to plan ahead, because there's nothing worse than going like, okay, we need grammar, we need spelling, we need vocabulary, we need this, we need that. Like you're going through this list and you end up with like, half of what you just purchased that you're not using because it's too much. And so you want to make things work for you. And that is what's nice when you are doing a literature. So, I think I used an example in one of our other conversations about Little Pear. It's a story about a little boy in China. And, so we're pulling out our big old wall map and I like put it on the counter and, we're talking about where he is in China and where we are. And and then we're looking at, he loved dumplings. So we made dumplings that day, but there's so many ways to really look at the culture. So, you're doing some history and not just reading a little story. We actually kind of skipped ahead and read like the Great Wall of China book that I think was scheduled later on. And that's where you can get totally flexible. And if there's a subject your kids are reading or really enjoying, don't be afraid to get some more books from the library. So oftentimes, if I see we're in an area of study that I know my kids are really going to enjoy, I'll go ahead and get a few extra books from the library and bring that into what we're already doing. Sometimes if we're not loving a book, and here's one of my Sonlight tips, and like you said, if your kids aren't totally loving a book, then skip it. It's okay. But there are so many ways that we can really streamline things. And so having that game plan, looking for gaps and looking for overlap are really going to help. And so that's probably one of my number one tips for people when they're planning out. So even if people are like, okay, it's January or it's February, whatever month it is, like you can start right there. Like, what do we need to finish? And so whenever we're feeling a little behind on things, I kind of look at what do we skip? Like what are we really loving? So this may sound horrible, but sometimes as a family, we're doing BSF. And so I'm not reading some of the Bible stuff that we have on my schedule for Sonlight because we're doing that with a different program. And then, we're loving some other things. So I'm adding more books in, or maybe we're skipping them. So again, like you can be so flexible, but really having a game plan helps you to do that.
I spoke with Trisha earlier, and we had this exact same conversation. You're not going to have a George Washington shaped hole in your curriculum if you skip a book on George Washington, because you will revisit him again and again throughout the years you're homeschooling. So remember that if the book's not working out, or if you know you're overlapping somewhere, it's okay. Put that book aside, make it a summer reader, hand it to your children when they're a little older and they need something to read. It's totally fine for them to read something as they age on their own as well. And that is okay. So.
Oh yeah, and actually one little tidbit there, what has been funny to me is that when I look at some of the books I skipped with my older boys, like we get to the end of, the year and I'm like, I don't want to finish one more book. And so we'll skip it. And then it's ones that my younger kids really love. And I'm like, whoops, sorry, come in and listen as we're reading it. This is really good. And vice versa, ones that I would have skipped, I'll have my boys read it somewhere else with some other curriculum, or I think there was a book that one of my boys were assigned to read for government and they loved it. And I was like, oh my gosh, I totally skipped that book with them earlier. I'm glad they got it. So it's so important to know that you're not the end all be all of your kids learning in their education. I have learned more about history. History was like boring. To me, when I was in college, like I remember it was interesting, but I was doing it because I had to do it and I just wanted to get done with it. And now I drive my children crazy because I'm a history buff. Like I can't get enough. And that is actually one big tip for parents is that when your kids find you falling in love with learning, it's going to be contagious.
That's such a good, I was thinking as you're talking, I mean, like the goal is to create lifelong learners that like learning, so that is really the goal. And if you're exemplifying what you want your children to be, you're doing a really good thing. So let's talk about how to tackle household chores. We all have them. We're busy with homeschool. We're busy with, mom life things. We're busy with keeping schedules. We're busy with those household chores. How can you get it all done in a day or a week?
Or a life. A lifetime. No, I always joke that, when you decide to homeschool, it's kind of like I start my day and I'm like, do I get homeschooling done or do I get housework done? I don't know. It doesn't feel like the two go together very often. So it is, it's a juggling act. And that is one of the things where when you create systems in your homeschool and systems in your home, it really does help just things to kind of go a little bit smoother because you will want to pull your hair out otherwise. So one of the systems that I didn't mention with homeschooling that really helps is I have a crate system that we use. And so that organizes our whole year up front. So we've got our homeschool going on cruise control. And then on the flip side, we create different chore systems. And to be really honest, until COVID hit, we had house cleaners that came. And, initially we stopped because that's what everybody did. We're like, stay at home, everybody stay away. But then once we felt like, oh no, we're comfortable having people in our home, I had to laugh because I was like, all right, let's bring the cleaners back. And my husband's like, no, we got this down. I was like, no, we don't. Back. And all the kids are like, Mom, talk them in now. This is fabulous. Look at how much easier it will be when you have your own home.
Yeah.
Or just know that you really want to have a great job so you can have a house cleaner. But it is a juggling act. And so when you create habits and routines, which I know that was one of the things we were going to chat about, it's so important. So for me, that is doing the same thing at the same time or the same thing on the same day. So Thursday nights, we know trash goes out because trash day is Friday. And if you don't get them out, then you're chasing the trash man down. But, with the little, I'm like, that's a great visual for me. I'm like, ah. But, we have different things. So on our day, our house day is Saturdays. So we tend to Saturday morning, we get up. Sometimes we have a fun breakfast, might make pancakes, and then everybody just goes and does their chores. And there's lots of different ways to divide and conquer. But we switch jobs all the time because kids get bored with it. But to have a set time to get things done is helpful. You can do things, like laundry. Laundry is another thing that kids need to get. I mean, I guess they don't really need to get dressed because you're homeschooling. No, I'm kidding.
We're all at home now.
I know, we're all at home. People are like, no, we're still staying at home. But Yeah, it's like that is one thing that we do on certain days. So like everybody has a day to get their laundry done, and it's motivating because if you don't get your laundry done, somebody's yelling at you to move your load and to get out because it's their day. So that's worked for us because we're a family of 7, so there's 7 days of the week, and so my husband and I do one day together. But it is really helpful to have everybody getting it done. And then we have little jobs that will happen every single day at the same time. So our dishwasher gets started every single night. Doesn't matter if it's full all the way or not, but we need clean dishes in the morning. So that's the type of thing that you want to identify. And actually in my M.O.M. Master Organizer of Mayhem book, I really try to get people to wrap their heads around that. Like you have to look at what's broken in your house. Like, are you guys super frustrated because in the morning there's nothing but dirty dishes and everybody's having to wash a bowl or a spoon in order to have cereal in the morning? That means you need a system for your dishes. And so what would be ideal? Do you need to have the dishwasher done in the evening so it can get emptied in the evening, or are you cool with it just waking up and having clean dishes? So you just kind of want to look for things and identify things that are broken and find out how you can fix those.
Absolutely. I have no shame in telling you that I also have someone that comes in and cleans my house, but I
Man.
work full time. I have 2 children. There's just things that I know I need help with. Otherwise, it's just, going to get out of control. So no
Yeah.
shame in telling you that. And
No, and I think homeschool moms really need that. I mean, if you can budget for it, like seriously, if you have $100 in your budget for the month I mean, ask someone, just be like, what can you get done for $100?
yep,
And you'd be surprised.
that we have like, a basement and then 2 levels. And so I'm like, you know what? I don't want to pay for the basement.
Mhm.
So don't go down. Like, there's negotiating ways, but that is something that I will always, if I can, find a way to figure out in my budget because it helps me.
Right?
I had my daughter come up to me on a Saturday and say, "Mom, why do you clean all weekend?" And I was like, "Why do I clean all weekend?" And that's when it changed. But I love the idea of splitting everything up
Yeah.
per day too, like having sort of an identified idea of what you need to tackle in the house. It's
Mhm.
excellent. Now my children still have chores and we still have to get things done.
Yes.
So then, you know, that happens. Let's talk about that. How do we find age appropriate chores for kids?
Well, that's the key. And that's that I'm like, honestly, that's my problem spot. Everybody is capable of doing things right now. Like our youngest is 7 and she can do most of the jobs. She can't do the high jobs, but she can do most of the jobs. And so that was kind of our little wake up call is and why we're doing the house ourselves right now, which is okay. It is a learning thing, but when life gets busy, I do plan on pitching like let's bring the cleaners back. But finding things for your kids to do because I do think that kids need to know how to do certain things. And quite frankly, for our family, we had cleaners coming every other week. And so that never meant that we were able to make it 2 weeks. Like our house like needs to be swept and, dusted and vacuumed and all that kind of stuff pretty regularly, and counters need to be wiped down. But finding age appropriate, number one, I would say you need to understand that your kids are capable of doing so much more than you think they are capable of. And I will never forget the time that I had a child throw a tantrum. And this child, I'm being very careful that I'm not even going to give a gender. This child decided in this tantrum that they were going to pull all the things off the hangers in the closet. And so the child was only 2.5. And I stood there and I'm like, let me show you how we put clothes on a hanger. And I did a few and I stood there and I let the child do the rest. And I was like, oh my goodness, you can do it. And so that's what's shocking is that your kids can do so much. So great starter for me is a dishwasher. So I have my little helper. So usually I'll pull all the knives out. Table knives aren't usually a big deal, but I'll set them next to me and they are sorting. And so anything that's sorting related. Another really fun one is we have a laundry basket in the laundry room, and that's for rags and towels and random stuff like socks we find hiding around the house. But that load gets done once a week, and that gets plopped on the floor, and it's a great time for all hands on deck, just come and do it. And so folding hand towels and rags and things like that, matching socks, little kids are really good at that. And honestly, here's the big thing: when you have your kids helping, no matter what the job is, do not expect perfection. If it goes in a drawer, let it be. Like, I'm sorry, I don't need to KonMari my, like, I love that the whole, Marie Kondo thing got people excited. Now you've got home edit that's taking the world by storm. And I laugh because I'm like, my book has a rainbow on it, but in no means like, do I ever use a rainbow to organize other than to separate out children. So I don't want to memorize what the jacket, like this, I'm going to like totally tangent on you, but like, I barely remember that my own book that I wrote has a blue spine. So if I want to go find my book, I don't want to be like, rainbow, where is it? So you have to think through for your kids, what can they do? Don't worry if it's not perfect. Maybe if it's a bathroom counter, you're doing it with them and you're getting excited and you're like, oh, you missed here. Maybe you're both doing it together. So then it's like you can kind of fix what, gets missed and things like that. But there's so many easy ways to get kids involved in doing it. And quite frankly, here's my massive takeaway from the Clover family having to clean their own house from top to bottom through our whole, it's been since February or March, I think. And that is the younger you start. And we did do a lot with our teenage boys, but I find they're definitely more resistant. I mean, they have a busier schedule, so I get that. Both of them tend to work on our cleaning day. So it's not like, for us, it's like, it's a big family thing on Saturday, but all the little kids are so excited to do their jobs. So the earlier you start, the more they'll, I don't know, they get excited about it. They think it's pretty fun.
Absolutely. My children have to unload the dishwasher every day. I load it because I have a little bit of anxiety about how it's loaded. So they unload it. And there are times when I can't find anything, like anything. I'm like, do these people even live here? But then I have to remind myself, take a breath. You didn't have to unload it. Like,
right.
Which is so good.
Yeah. And that's why, and people laugh at me because I have not labeled because we did our kitchen remodel last year. I haven't labeled everything, but my kids somewhat know my systems with how I organize my kitchen. But I laugh because I feel like every week I'm like, this is a spatula. The spatula goes here. And like this, the tongs are always get me. I'm like, tongs, these are considered serving tools. Serving tools go in this drawer. This is where the tongs go. The tongs don't go. They don't go in the knife area. Yeah. They don't cut things.
For sure. We have this one glass bowl that is a mixing bowl, and he puts it with my son puts it with the Tupperware every single time. And every single time I look at him and I say, this goes up here. Mm-hmm. Those are Tupperware bowls, or like they're glass, but
see, I could see that.
Yeah, but every time I find it all piled up in there, I'm like, you didn't have to put them away, and I just move it. Sometimes I'm like, okay, let's revisit this. This goes over here.
I added a large Tupperware because we had some extra space. We had, because when you're designing things on paper, and like we have an area where we have these two huge drawers, and I'm like, I didn't think they were gonna be that big, but awesome. Okay, yay! Like, woohoo! But I moved all of our big Tupperware to be stored in there. It all can fit in our Tupperware drawer, but no one can organize the drawer unless it's me. And so I just gave up, and I'm like, if I keep all the big ones out, then the small ones can at least be somewhat stuffed in, and I don't have to go in as normal. But yeah, no, the struggle is real.
For sure. How do you said you use a crate system for homeschooling. So like, do you allow your children to help you with that crate system if you have to trade things out or anything? Are they involved with that?
Depends on their age and kind of their capability. So like my teenagers, absolutely, like they'll go in and they'll switch things out and stuff like that. My 12-year-old, so he, like the next one down, he probably could if I asked him to, but he'd forget midway. So like, he's the one that like, he's all about fun. So, if something, then I'd have to go and figure out where he stopped. So that would be kind of where so that might not be the best thing, but this is a great opportunity for me over Christmas break. I bought okay, this is my silly thing. I bought a new crate and it's big and it has wheels and it's like so exciting. And so like, I just wheel that little baby out. And so like this is a great time to reboot, over Christmas break in January. So yeah, I'm going to be adjusting some things. I was sharing with you that we're behind on some science things. And so we're going to be shuffling all of those things around to kind of make adjustments, and that's fine. And honestly, with my crate system, sometimes I literally just add a folder in the front. I'm like, this is the math that we're behind on. I'm like, just stick. And so that's where I would have my kids. I'm like, oh, sorry. Yep, that's right. I forgot to pull that out of your folder. Stick that behind the work. So then it's all right there. So sometimes it's that easy, is that you're just kind of moving things or into one little spot. But grammar and math are tough with the crate because those are so, stepwise, they're, incremental. And so with those, so often the kids get stuck. And so sometimes that math frustration isn't really math. It's that like, they don't know their math facts strong enough and you're moving them along too quickly and they really need to get the other stuff done. So we'll just pause on that. And that sometimes it will throw our crate off a little bit. And same with reading. Sometimes they're really stuck and, a curriculum's moving too fast. Sometimes it's moving too slow and we're pulling stuff out. And that I actually don't adjust my crate for. That I'm like, just go grab it. Like go to the next week and grab it. But it is like when they're falling a little behind, because I don't like leaving. And this is my weird thing. I like them to feel like a week is completed. So I don't like leaving work in other folders. The folder at the end of the week always moves to the back. So that's why I like to adjust it. So it's a mental thing. It's a very visual psychological thing for kids, is that you want them to feel like the work is done and I'm not going to be having to do school forever. So if you leave, like if it's really week 15 of your homeschool and you have week 10 still in there, they're going to look at it and be like, I'm never going to finish. And so it's really important to make sure you're encouraging kids from that standpoint.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you are on week 10 in week 15, you know what? Scratch week 15 off the paper. Just scratch it. Put or week 10 or vice versa, whatever it was. And for week 15, which is great. So I know that you have a ton of rules that that you're giving people to like follow for organization. So what are your top tips that you have for home and homeschool organization that you're like, if you do nothing else, do these things?
Ooh, that's so good. I'm like, oh, I don't know. This is going to sound really weird. But I think it's really important to plan fun into any kind of organizing that you do. Unfortunately, I think we can all attest to the fact that organization doesn't stay done. It is something that you always have to stay on top of. So you have to figure out ways that motivate you to actually get things done, and your kids. So I talk about that in both Homeschool Basics, in my organization course, and in my M.O.M book. Fun is this, like, you got to bring it in. And maybe it's because people who follow Enneagram, I've been told I'm a 7, which is like the fun person. So like, know that like, for me to be organized, I have to have fun in there. And I found that that's true for everyone. So making sure that for we already talked about planning ahead. That's key for everything. Having that game plan, planning the night before is great if you have a project, but not for homeschooling. You don't want to do that. I used to hate our first several years of homeschooling was all around like, it's Monday, now what? Like, where were we? So I don't suggest that for home. But if you're going on a field trip or doing something, then yeah, plan the night before. But yeah, if you are just incorporating bits of fun and making it fun. So whether it's cleaning your house or decluttering the garage, or, maybe you're trying to get caught up on science or writing or some other program. Maybe you are behind in a book and you just want to, honestly, why don't you take the day and instead of reading one chapter, just take a day and read the book and, skim ahead, or you can even do a Google search to find out, some topics or themes in the book. And so when you incorporate fun, you'll find that, not if your whole day is only fun every day, then nothing's going to happen. But you have to, make time to get organized, but make sure you have fun in there too. So I don't know, that's probably not what people expected. But I mean, when I'm looking at both of them, that's probably my number one of my top tips. I don't know if it's my number one. And the other thing that I really highly suggest, and this will take you far into the new year, is figure out what your pain points are. What's driving you insane? And that's where you're going to start. So if it's a laundry, then figure out some laundry tips. Look it up. You know, I've got a whole chapter on laundry in my M.O.M book. I'm coming out with a laundry course soon to help, because that's always the number one question. Yeah. How do you feed your people in laundry? Like, those are the two questions I get when people are like, you have that many children? Um, but, you know, figure out what your pain points are. Same thing in homeschooling. Are you not getting to a certain subject? Then move that subject to the beginning of the day. Get it done. You know, so you need to really take a step back sometime and get a big picture for your problem.
Absolutely. And I think that fun actually might seem surprising, but at the same time, this was all about finding joy in organization. So it does
Right.
make sense. You tie
Yeah.
it together with a pretty little bow.
That's right. You know, what people don't know is that this is a Friday night right now. So
I know. We're recording.
and that's like unplugged. I'm like, I don't know. What did I just say? No.
Boom.
Like, look at that. We actually read it together.
Well, I hope that people have found this beneficial. I know they have. I appreciate you so much for joining me and talking all
Absolutely.
about finding joy and organizing chaos. I think it is a great topic and I think it is so beneficial. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. And I do want to point out that I have one other resource coming out in January, and that is I have a mom challenge, an M.O.M, so a Master Organizer of Mayhem challenge. So if you're looking to just have a little bit of fun and get on top of some projects, it's a great opportunity. And that's at kristiclover.com/mom challenge.
I love it.
So have it right there, and it'll be a really fun way to get some projects done.
I love it. Thank you so much, Kristi.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Bye.